That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern.
A watershed moment in Karen Reed's case could be just a few hours away. The Honorable Beverly Cannone to address the grave concern that abruptly ended the last hearing. Court TV is on the ground in Dedham, Massachusetts for the case seeking justice for Officer John O'Keefe. And family and neighbors now speaking out about the home where 3 children were abandoned for years. They say that the mother would sometimes be sitting right outside of the home while the children were inside living in squalor. Also this hour, we've got the corn rake murder trial back in court. Todd Mullis seeking a brand new trial. And this morning, we're spotlighting the defendant in his case, talking then versus now. Plus, we've got a shocking guilty verdict in the sleepwalking twin murder trial. Should the judge show some leniency at sentencing? We'll talk about it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. We have a tremendous show planned for you, so let's get right to it. Grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. Someone's pants are on fire in Florida. Someone who was in the house when 5-year-old Jayla Bass was shot and killed, and her 8-year-old brother shot and wounded. Hearing that precious boy crying about how badly his head hurt while his baby sister was dying upstairs in their bedroom made my heart sink and made my blood boil. This should have never happened. Somebody needs to pay the price now. Their father, the defendant, tells police that it was an accident when he was taking the magazine out of his Glock. Really? 5 times that gun accidentally discharged? Wrong. Whomever was pulling that trigger almost unloaded the whole magazine. That gun's magazine only holds 6 rounds. And it doesn't just go off when you take the magazine out. You press a little button on the left side, the magazine drops right out. Glock, by the way, also has a safety mechanism built into the trigger. It's like you hit a little wall when you initially pull back the trigger, and you have to pull the trigger past that safety wall to fire it. Another safeguard there. But somebody pulled that trigger 5 times, deliberately. Deliberately. This guy's story makes no sense. So he would want us to believe, well, why in the world would this guy be in his kid's bedroom while they're asleep, pull out his loaded gun only because he wants to take the magazine out at that time while they're in their bunk beds, and in the process, he fires 5 accidental shots at the kids. The story is hogwash. What happened to those beautiful, innocent children was not an accident. Somebody did it on purpose. And I think I have a pretty good idea who it was. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
She spent the entire month after her husband of 20 years was slaughtered in their backyard, either with her lover, Robert Baker, or, as you heard, sending him naked photographs of herself or close-up photos of her intimate body parts.
All right, in California, we've got the state's case continuing in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Cementilli. Court's going to convene at noon. In Texas, we have the sentencing for Benjamin Elliott. This is in the sleepwalking twin murder trial. He was convicted on Monday. Sentencing starts at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And in Massachusetts, we've got the continuation of Karen Reed's motions hearing that the Honorable Beverly Cannone abruptly ended last week. Well, it's going to resume this morning, starting at 11 a.m. And that is our top story for you. It's a potential monumental day in this case. There's the inquiry before the court of whether the defense duped the court at Karen Reed's first trial. In the meantime, there are several reports saying that the federal investigation into the case is now over, finding no corruption. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan is expected to make that announcement sometime today during the proceedings. Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is in Massachusetts with more.
Julie, good morning. The outcome of today's hearing could reshape the entire defense case and what we see during the retrial.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel. So I'll see you a week from today at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Judge Beverly Cannone ordering all parties back to court today, saying to be prepared and address issues related to the apparent communications and possible invoice with the ARCA experts who testified in Trial 1. Last year, the defense told the court that they could not trial prep with the crash reconstructionists because of the ongoing federal investigation. Judge Cannone abruptly ending the hearing last week after Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan started reading notes turned over by the defense.
I'm not saying that undermines the conclusions of ARCA, or not. I'm not saying they're not qualified witnesses, but it certainly shows some bias. Statistically speaking, most pedestrian fatalities occur during the evening and night hours. That would have been nice to have. And then he comments, if you don't want me to say this, that's fine. That's fine. Shh. Don't tell them. And then a bill from ARCA to the defense for $23,925. That's not Trimble. That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
And the hearing expected to start at 11 a.m. Of course, we'll be in the courtroom, Julie.
All right, our thanks to Matt Johnson for that early update. Now I have two great guests standing by to dig in more on these big issues. Let's welcome them in now. Here with me, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Krowski, and investigative award-winning journalist M. William Phelps, who, by the way, did a tremendous investigative podcast series called 34 Fairview Road on this case. Welcome to you both. Let's start with what we can expect to happen today at the hearing. How is Judge Cannone going to run the hearing this morning? Joe, you've practiced before Judge Cannone many times. You knew her when she was a practicing attorney before taking the bench. How do you think she's going to run the hearing?
So, yes, I have a long history with Judge Cannone, and let this put to rest any and all criticism about Judge Cannone and any perceived bias. Throughout the entirety of this trial, she has bent over backwards to allow Karen Reed to have a fair and robust defense. What she's going to do today, she's going to give them every opportunity to explain what on the record appears to be contradictions and misleading information. You might recall Judge Cannone herself expressed skepticism when the defense indicated they wanted to call the three ARCA witnesses that they were not going to be allowed to talk to other than, quote, coordinating their trial testimony, which I think we all took to mean their scheduling. Clearly, based on these emails, either at the time that was incorrect or circumstances changed. And when circumstances changed, the defense didn't alert the court to that. The saving grace for the defense might be Judge Cannone. She is fair. She is forgiving. She's also pragmatic. I think given the circus-like atmosphere around this case, she wants this case to go to trial April 1st, and she knows Alan Jackson has essentially handled 80% of the testimony in the first trial and knows that removing him at this juncture would result in delay, and she doesn't want delay. But again, she's a very fair person. I hope they come with a conciliatory tone.
Well said, Joe. Well said. Of course, this hearing was scheduled long before the reporting started swirling yesterday regarding this federal investigation that is over, has been over, and found nothing. So many people are wondering, might this come up today? M. William Phelps, I want to turn to you on that point, please. Your thoughts on all of the reporting that came out yesterday, most of it source reporting that the investigation's over, been over, found nothing.
Well, I mean, I didn't expect anything less than that. This federal investigation, if you will, I don't even know if there was a legit federal investigation going on. I mean, when I looked into the case and I interviewed people in law enforcement, people, prosecutors, etc. I even spoke to Alan Jackson. He refused to go on record on the podcast, which didn't shock me, but I did speak to him. And this was all smoke and mirrors from day one. I mean, and if you look at the trail of evidence in this case, texts, emails, her own statements, Karen Reed is the one who really put this all in play and made it something bigger than it actually was. And what we saw in that hearing last week was just a symptom of allowing this entire process to basically go on without any sort of oversight, if you will, you know, with lawyers just being allowed to do whatever the hell they want. And it's about time that the judge really put her foot down on this case. And it took a prosecutor with the experience and the guts of Hank Brennan to make that happen.
Isn't that the truth? Well said. Well said, Matthew. I want to play a clip for you both from the hearing last Tuesday. This was another major moment Hank Brennan brought to light, where essentially he knocked down the big house of cards and exposed the relationship between Karen Reed and the guy who calls himself Turtle Boy, criminal defendant Aidan Kearney. Take a look.
There is a history, a symbiotic relationship between Ms. Reed and Mr. Kearney. There is a history of documented evidence showing the sharing of discovery between the parties. And being in a position of representing two different defendants who are not co-defendants.
Yeah, that was a moment. He went on to say that it's a mutual aid type of relationship that's going on, and made a point to say these aren't co-defendants, so they shouldn't be sharing discovery, and they have a history of doing that. M. William Phelps, your reaction to that moment. I know it happened last week, but you were one to shed light on this in your podcast many, many months ago. I'm curious what you thought when you saw it finally come out in a court of law.
Yeah, I was just so glad to see it come out publicly like this in the court, because to be perfectly frank and honest with you, the Boston press, print press and television press, has done a terrible job at reporting any of this stuff. And it was obvious so long ago. And I'm glad to see Hank bring it out, because the court was duped. That is the proper word here, duped, lied to, I would even say. You know, somebody has got to get a handle on this thing, and maybe we see that happen today.
Right. Hank Brennan chooses his words so carefully. He's masterful. I've said it before, I'll say it again. A monster of a trial attorney. Yes. He is so sharp, so seasoned, and that's exactly what he said. He said the court has been duped here. And we know a fraud on the court is one of the most serious things that can happen in the criminal justice system. I want to go back to you, Joe Krowski. If Judge Cannone finds there was a fraud perpetrated on this court of law, what are the potential ramifications for defendant Karen Reed and for her defense attorneys?
So if she were to determine that the court was misled in the attorneys for Ms. Reed perpetrated a fraud in the court, it could run the gamut, all the way from having them removed from the case, which would be extraordinary and exceptional, down to having them reported to the Board of Bar Overseers. As a matter of fact, if she determines that there was a fraud on the court, she's duty-bound to refer whatever the fraudulent conduct was to the Board of Bar Overseers for investigation. And it certainly These attorneys have unblemished records, get the benefit of the doubt, and that's why I think she hit the pause button last week, to allow them time so they're not ambushed, to collect their thoughts and prepare a response to this. I go back to the pragmatism. This case has generated a lot of turmoil, a lot of harassment, and it's made it difficult for the court to do the court's business. So I don't think she's going to do anything to disrupt that April 1st trial schedule. But certainly, look, the stakes are high today, and there was a visceral reaction. She was exasperated when the information came to light, because the emails and the voir dire testimony and the trial testimony just doesn't reconcile with the representations of the autonomy and the independence of ARCA. Another point, not just the defense attorneys, ARCA. The ARCA testifying witnesses have a significant problem here.
Right. You're right, Joe. And it's on video. I mean, we have the video. Last time you were on the program, Joe, we went back and played the clip, and we see the representation that David Yannetti makes to her honor. No doubt she's seen the clip. She's reviewed the transcript. Joe, tell me, do you think that, assuming the retrial happens on April 1st, do you think that the attorneys are going to be permitted to mention the federal investigation that Karen Reed and her defense team wanted to talk so much about?
I don't think they'll want to, because after I represented a witness that was subpoenaed to the federal grand jury investigation, they did everything they could to find wrongdoing and corruption. They subpoenaed the civilian witnesses, and I don't think it's coincidental that the timing of them authorizing the government to notify everyone that the investigation is closed coincides with the malfeasance of ARCA.
Perfect point to end on. We'll leave it there for now. I'd love to have you both back here another time soon. Attorney Joe Krowski, award-winning investigative journalist, podcaster, and author M. William Phelps. Thank you both kindly, and be sure to check out Matthew's podcast, 34 Fairview Road. Coming up next here on Opening Statements.
We would be outside for hours and hours with a friend.
We're learning more about the mother who left her 3 kids abandoned in a house of filth. And more than 5 years after being convicted for his wife's murder, Todd Mullis is back in court. 2 innocent children put to bed,
only to awaken to the sound of gunfire.
Now a father stands trial accused of shooting his own kids in their bunk beds, killing one.
I hope that this individual feels the full weight of the criminal justice system and never sees the light of day.
Court TV takes you inside this tragic case,
as a jury must now decide the fate of this father.
Now for what's trending in true crime, a neighbor speaking out that he did speak to the children left to fend for themselves in that Michigan house of horrors. He lives 2 doors down from the home where those 3 kids were found living in squalor. Look at these pictures. We had to blur some of them. It's so unsightly. Trash, human waste all over the place in this house. Their mother, Kelly Bryan, is behind bars this morning. She's being held on $250 million bond. Good. The neighbor revealed how he communicated with the kids. Take a listen.
They say, hey, nice car. But, you know, and I might wave back at them, but that's it. There's no way that I could have known that they were in a terrible situation.
He also said he'd see the mom outside the house with some of her friends. So this morning, we're asking, why didn't anybody look inside of that home? Let's bring in our guest now, former homicide prosecutor and the co-host of the True Crime Show Mondays with Melba on MTN. Melba Pearson is here, and want to welcome in attorney and former prosecutor Randolph Rice. Good morning to you both. So let's talk about nobody going in. We see a nice neighbor guy, you know, waving to the kids, hey, what's up, but never really going beyond that. Not his fault, not his kids, but nobody, no family, no one connected to the kids in any way is looking inside. Melba, your thoughts on this, please?
Well, good morning, Julie and Randolph. And yes, this is pretty disturbing, but I don't think it's that unusual because people tend to want to mind their own business, right? If you're not invited to someone's house, you're not going to necessarily walk up to the front door and start peering in the windows because, of course, that's something that could attract the attention of law enforcement thinking that you're trying to break in or something along those lines. So they probably just, well, the kids are waving, they're speaking, from a distance, they seem fine, and they left well enough alone. However, it is very interesting to note that the biological father of the kids, as well as I believe the grandfather, kept trying to reach out to this defendant, wanting to have contact with the kids, and she kept saying no, no, no. So I don't know why they didn't go to the front door or, look around the windows, because they would have more of a legal right since they are biologically related to those children. And I'm pretty sure that they wish they had done that a whole lot sooner.
Yes, Melba, agreed. Randolph, your thoughts on this, please.
I think Melba makes all the points that I was actually going to make. So good job, Melba, this morning. But I really think about these kids. I mean, these poor children who have really missed out on, and what it sounds like, a big chunk of that developmental period of their life. There's a 15-year-old who certainly could have had so much opportunity in the past couple of years to do all the things that 15-year-olds got to do. And it sounds like the mother had him literally caged in this house, taking food deliveries, and that was the only option. At one point, I heard that they were getting one loaf of bread that was supposed to last them 3 or 4 days. I mean, that's just horrible to do to your own children. There's certainly a mental health component here for the mother. I'm interested to see how this case plays out, but it really is just a deplorable situation.
It really is. You're so right, Randolph. Family members are speaking out. They're saying that Ms. Kelly Bryant lied to them. There's a shocker about who was taking care of the kids. Let's take a look.
It just hurt because it's not the fact that she had to take them through that. Why would she do that and that wasn't the situation?
How are you guys coping with that?
I mean, it's sickening because it was like we wasn't running from the situation. We always asked about them. They doing all right, but it's a lot of scar there. It's a lot of scar.
Brian's former sister-in-law says that Kelly Bryant was very close to her family. So it makes us wonder, how does a close family end up like this? If they're close, you would think they'd be going over each other's houses, right? Seeing each other's kids. I mean, even sending a picture of the kids. I mean, the state that these children were in, investigators said they had trouble walking because their toenails were so long. They gave them a toothbrush and toothpaste and they didn't know what to do with it because they hadn't learned how to brush their teeth. They didn't learn how to flush a toilet. This is a woman close with her family and the family has no idea. Randolph, what do you think about this, please?
Well, we often see this with family members that once something bad happens, they sort of circle the wagons and start defending even the horrible behavior of their family members because it is family. We always go to defend our family because those are the people that we count on, we trust, that are closest to us. I think that they were all so duped by her behavior, by Ms. Bryant's behavior, that maybe they're in shock at this point in time and they can't even believe how bad it is. But once this case comes out, once the facts come out, I would bet they're going to be singing a different tune.
Right, Randolph. And Melba, I want to go back to a point you made earlier. It kind of got me thinking when you were saying how some of these family members were trying to reach out, right? And they're also, well, we tried, she wouldn't let us. Of course, she looks terrible right now. She's the bad guy in the media. Everybody's talking about this story, but it kind of makes me think, why didn't Dad want to put eyes on them at the very least? Say, well, show me a picture. I want to make sure the kids are alive and well and okay. It kind of makes you wonder, how did they accept this behavior or not, force it with a court of law, force it with a police welfare check, something. Your thoughts on that, please, Melba?
Well, unfortunately, I think hindsight is 20/20. And I think that he truly wanted to believe, and there was no universe where he would have thought his children were in that condition. And he was just taking his ex at her word that, hey, the kids are fine, everything's great, they're going to school or whatever the case may be. I don't know how close in proximity and distance they were. So was he on the other side of town and working a lot and really wasn't able to pop by? Like, I mean, I think there might have been a million reasons why he may not have gone over there. But I think the elemental thing is the relationship ended probably not very well. And if she's saying, listen, you can't see the kids, but trust me, they're doing well. I can only surmise maybe there were financial issues. Maybe he didn't have the ability to get an attorney and try to, bring in Child Protective Services. But again, if he doesn't know the scope of how bad the problem is, how is he to act? So, I think there was a desire to want to believe her, and there may have been just practical reasons why he wasn't able to get over there, possibly. I don't know.
Sure. No, but thank you for the insight and the discussion. I know we're not done with this case, and I've got so many more questions for you two on other cases. Melba and Randolph, stand by kindly, please. We're going to hit a break. When we return, we're talking about convicted killer Todd Mullis. Remember him? The farmer who went to prison for killing his wife, Amy, with a corn rake? Yeah, well, he's back. He wants his conviction tossed. We'll talk about it. And convicted killer Benjamin Elliott. That's right, convicted killer. The jury found him guilty of killing his twin sister intentionally. His family sure didn't think it was intentional. What are they going to say at sentencing that might tip the scales of justice? Welcome back. This morning, we're shining a spotlight on the corn rake murder case as Todd Mullis is back in court fighting for a new trial. So a lot has changed for Mullis since 2019, including his appearance, which caught the attention of many of our trial watchers and many of my colleagues up in our Court TV newsroom. Mullis was convicted of first-degree murder for the death of his wife, Amy, by killing her with a corn rake on their family farm. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility for parole. Now, his attorneys are asking that his conviction be vacated due to his first trial being, as they say, fundamentally unfair. So could there be some new evidence in Mullis's case? Well, on Monday, the pathologist who performed Amy Mullis's autopsy doubled down on Amy's death being a homicide and not accidental.
A person could potentially fall on a sharp object, such as the corn rake, once. To think, as a medical doctor, that someone could fall on something backwards, be impaled entirely through their torso, pull that object out through the back of them, then fall on it again, pull it out, and potentially fall on it a third time, which I think seems reasonable, is way outside any degree of medical certainty.
Now, the post-conviction relief hearings expected to last multiple days with more witness testimony coming up in our next hour. I want to welcome in now Iowa-based criminal defense attorney Lucas Taylor. Lucas, good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming on the program today. So would you kind of explain to us this effort by Todd Mullis's defense team and what they're hoping to accomplish in the hearing over the next couple of days?
Well, thank you, Julie, for having me this morning. What they're trying to do is, this is one of their last shots to overturn this conviction. Mr. Mullis has already went through the appeal process, which was denied by the Iowa Court of Appeals. And so now the next step in the process to try to show the court that some error was made during this trial, and especially in this case, that his defense counsel made errors while representing him that led to him receiving this fundamentally unfair trial, and that's why the conviction should be overturned and a new trial should be granted.
Okay, so going after the former defense attorney, that's common, is it not, Lucas, in post-conviction relief? A lot of times after clients convicted, they may turn on their own counsel.
Especially in a murder case, you'll probably see in just about every single case that goes to trial, a post-conviction relief hearing is going to happen.
I want to go back and look at one of those big moments during the case. And this might have been a moment that tipped the scales of justice, as I like to say, when prosecutors were questioning Todd Mullis. And remember, he testified in his first, or in his trial. Maybe he'll get a second trial, who knows. But he's being questioned on the 911 call that was made and what he said. Let's listen.
Just try to listen really closely. I just want to know if you remember what you said. Right there, do you say go to hell, cheating whore?
No.
So you don't hear that?
No.
You didn't hear at 6:53, cheating whore? You didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that word.
And it's right at that, after you hear a ping, you don't hear go to hell, cheating whore?
No.
Okay, Todd Mullis might not have done himself any favors by taking the stand. Lucas Taylor, what do you think about his decision to testify? Is it haunting him now?
Well, it's clearly haunting him now, as that's one of the claims he's making in this post-conviction relief proceeding, is that his attorney misguided him and misadvised him in order to get him on the stand. And now he's claiming that his attorney failed in that duty to advise him of his rights, advise him to maybe not testify in his own defense in order to avoid being cross-examined and being confronted with that type of evidence.
Right, Lucas. I want to play another moment where the couple's son, Todd and Amy's son, Tristan, gave some testimony in the case. Let's take a listen together now.
And the defense attorney also asked you about using that iPad of your dad's, and you indicated that there was a time now that you remember you might have searched something or looked something up.
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you remember exactly what you looked up?
No.
Did you look up on that iPad killing unfaithful women?
No.
Did you look up what happened to cheating spouses in historic Aztec tribes?
No.
Did you ever visit a site which indicated the punishment for killing a cheating wife?
No.
Did you ever look up, did ancient cultures kill adulterers?
No.
And did you ever look up the characteristics of a cheating woman?
No.
Okay, so Tristan didn't do those searches that were very incriminating for Mr. Todd Mullis, the dad. Lucas, tell me, what do you think about that? You know, he's making these arguments, about his counsel not consulting with an expert, regarding whether the nature of the event was accidental, as you say, misadvising him about taking the stand. What about this? I mean, this was bad, wasn't it?
Well, it certainly sounds bad, but one thing you don't see in that video, and one of the issues being raised in this proceeding, is that that child is testifying via closed-circuit television, which is something that the Iowa Supreme Court recently said you cannot do. And so one of the claims now is that counsel is ineffective for raising that issue and essentially forcing that child to testify in the courtroom right in front of Mr. Mullis.
Oh, wow, that's interesting, Lucas. Oh, okay, so of all the issues that the Mullis defense team is raising in this post-conviction relief petition, what, if any, of the issues has teeth, if you will? Is there anything in your opinion that you think just might result in this case coming back?
What sticks out to me is the fact that his defense counsel during that trial conceded that this was a homicide. As you can see, the focus of the current defense team is to establish that there is a valid, viable theory that this was an accident. And so when defense counsel essentially conceded at the opening statement that this was a homicide, this was a murder, it basically eliminated that route, that type of defense in this case. And that is something that the U.S. Supreme Court has even said, that defendants do have a right to have some say in what their defense is going to be, and especially in terms of conceding elements of the offense.
You explain things so well. Lucas Taylor, I'm so glad we had you on the show to talk about this case. Would love to have you back. And we have a lot of cases in Iowa, you know, not just this one, but it seems that we tend to go there from time to time with different trials. So thank you for all of this. Again, Todd Mullis' case going to resume today, that post-conviction relief hearing. Lucas, thank you kindly. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, we're talking about a young defendant looking at life in prison for stabbing his twin sister to death. Will the family tip the scales at the sentencing for Benjamin Elliott?
Do you know of any reason why your son would intentionally and knowingly cause the death of your daughter?
No. Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist Murder Trial, today, only on Court TV.
Call number 1741609, State of Texas versus Benjamin David Elliott. We, the jury, find the defendant Benjamin David Elliott guilty of murder as charged in the indictment, signed by the foreman of the jury, printed by the foreman of the jury.
This kid is something else. No emotion throughout the whole trial and none at the reading of the verdict. This is the sleepwalking twin murder trial. And that defendant, Benjamin Elliott, is going to be sentenced today. Were you shocked at the verdict? The jury said that he murdered his twin sister, Megan, as she was sleeping in her bed back in 2021. Benjamin had told police he was sleepwalking at the time, woke up to find the knife stuck in his sister's neck. The twins' parents were stunned and sat in silence in the gallery at the time the verdict was read. And they're going to be back in court this morning for their son's sentencing. They're expected to deliver impact statements, and they're also expected to ask the court for leniency. Both of the parents were very emotional when they testified.
I'm showing you State's Exhibit 75. If you could just take a look at State's Exhibit 75 and tell me if this is your daughter, Megan Elliott.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's Megan. Megan and Ben like to watch movies together. They were working on a video game together. Ben was going to program it, and Megan was going to draw all the animals and all the monsters. She loved drawing monsters with pointy feet.
Elliott's looking at life in prison. Will his family tip the scales at his sentencing? Let's talk about it. I want to bring back in Randolph Rice and Melba Pearson and get their thoughts. Let's start first with your reactions to the verdict. Melba, yours, please.
Heartbreaking all around, because at the end of the day, these parents lost two kids. One, unfortunately, is in the grave and one's going to prison. And I don't even know how a family comes back from that level of trauma. And my other question in terms of how all of this happened was, were there signs that were missed? Again, hindsight being 20/20, but again, was he watching violent video games? It seemed that he did have a history of sleepwalking, but did he have a history of violence or being attracted to violent games that his parents didn't pick up on, which ended up possibly resulting in this? Because again, when you hear all the evidence, it just doesn't seem to, it kind of comes out of nowhere. It didn't seem that he had a problem with his sister, allegedly. It didn't seem that they were fighting or, I didn't hear about any journal entries where he said he wanted to kill people or anything like that. So again, there's just this big question mark, despite the fact the prosecution does not need to prove motive. There's still a big question mark of why did this happen? And is this mental health, or was this, watching too many violent video games, or what would cause a child to kill his sister in this way? It's just, I don't think we'll ever know the answer, but it's just heartbreaking.
Right, Melba. I couldn't agree more. Randolph, what did you think when you heard the verdict of guilty?
Well, I agree with Melba. This is just sad all around for everybody. But I actually was a little shocked, and this may not be a very popular position, but I thought the defense maybe should have leaned a little bit harder into this because of the fact that there was no history on the part of the defendant, Mr. Elliott, of any type of mental health or animosity towards his sister. It just, you know, they had this loving relationship. There are reports of no real serious mental health issues. They had it appears to have a great family life. This is something that this sleepwalking defense, I thought had some legs to it, and I thought would actually have some effect on the jury, and they may buy into this. Now, the judge can still go along with this, and the judge can still say, you know what, I'm going to take that in consideration in my sentencing.
Great point, Randolph. I agree with you as well. I was surprised. I was saying yesterday, this was one of those trials to me that was anybody's case. You know, usually it's not so close. You know, this one to me was, you could flip a coin. Who knew what that jury was going to do? And with you, there might have been a little bit of a deficiency in the advocacy, just in the sense that they could have gone harder. You know, yes, they raised some questions, but you're right. You know, you really have to believe in your position to get the jury to believe it. You both know that. You both are sensational trial lawyers. And so now, as you said, Randolph, the judge can potentially factor everything he learned throughout the trial into the delivery of the sentence. So what do you think, Randolph, might be appropriate for this young man who I believe is 21 now, if my math is correct? What do you think? Is it something less than life?
If I'm the judge, I place him in the detention center for a period of time that gets his attention. Look, he's been, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's been incarcerated since this crime, which I believe is either 3 or 4 years now. You add a little bit more time, and what you do is, in my opinion, is you put a 5-year period of probation of supervision that is very restrictive. Get him back in the home with his parents. Think about the parents being the victims, really, in this case, because they've lost, as Melba said, you've lost one to death and you've lost one going to jail for the rest of his life, probably. You put him in jail for a period of time, then you release him on probation, a very restrictive, say, 5-year probation, and try to reintegrate him back into his family, because ultimately he's so young, he needs to be back with them to try to reform and get him back into a normal lifestyle.
Yeah, great points. Randolph, thank you. Melba, that sounds really reasonable, doesn't it? What do you think? What do you think might be the argument from these parents when they come forward, deliver their impact statements, and plead for some mercy for him?
Ooh, I would not want to be the judge here, because it's going to be hard to have a dry eye in that courtroom. Because when you saw the emotion that the parents had when they testified, the way the father broke down as he was identifying his daughter, they are going to weep and literally plead for their son's life. And you have to have some compassion for them, right? So I think that the judge, you know, much like Randolph said, I think the judge might be very sympathetic to what's happening here. And again, at the end of the day, we still don't know why this happened. Like, this just, again, came out of nowhere. So I agree that, you know, I think some prison would be appropriate, but there needs to be serious mental health counseling while he's in prison, while he's on probation, if he is, you know, released on probation afterwards, to unpack why this happened, address the sleepwalking so he doesn't harm anyone again. And much like Randolph said, we're agreeing with each other a lot today, the family is critical. Because again, he needs that support in order to make sure he doesn't reoffend or, you know, go down the wrong direction as a result of what happened here.
And you know what they say, Melba, great minds think alike. You and Randolph are tremendous guests. Thank you for all of the legal insight and analysis this morning. We'll see you back here very soon. That is all for this episode of Opening Statements. But guess what? If you liked it, you could watch it again. You could share it with your friends. Tell everybody Coffee in Court every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And on your favorite website there on courttv.com, we put the shows up every day so you can watch it again, share them, do whatever you like. We're just glad you are here this morning.